So I've got a Rolando Jupiter-6 in the studio for a few days, so I thought I'd smash out a quick video with it while I had the chance. Now this one, of the original trio of Jupiters, has a reputation of sounding cold. And certainly in my mind, the Jupiter-4 is kind of the fuzzy rose-tinted 70s sounding one. The Jupiter-8 is the kind of hi-fi dream machine. And the Jupiter-6 is the more dystopian of the three. Let's have a quick listen. So the Jupiter-6 has the same SEM 3340 VCO ICs as the Prophet 5 Rev 3 and a number of other synths, and it has the same IR3109 filter ICs as the Jupiter-8 and the later Jupiter-4. So on paper, that's not a recipe for a cold sounding synth. However, the twist is in the implementation of the filters. So they looked on the Jupiter-6 to tap the filter poles in order to give you multi-mode filters, so you can switch between low pass, high pass, or press both for bandpass filtering. Fantastic. However, in doing that, the outcome was that as you push the resonance, the filter feedback starts to dominate the signal chain, and not necessarily in a good way, to the point that there are well-documented mods to rectify this. So that has an impact on the sound of the Jupiter-6. The next thing I wanted to talk about is modulation on the Jupiter-6. So LFO1 here will run right up into the audio range, and you can do audio rate modulation of either or both of the VCOs. You can do audio rate pulse width modulation, you can do audio rate filter FM, and you can do audio rate amplitude modulation as well. You can cross modulate with VCO2 as modulator and VCO1 as carrier. And unlike the earlier Jupiters, you can actually mix waveforms on the VCOs. You've also got envelope modulation of all those destinations as well, and another LFO down here in the performance section. Plus, unique to the Jupiter-6, you've got bidirectional phase sync, and you'll see me in the video at some points rhythmically switching the phase sync or turning it on and off as well. And all that adds up to allow you to create really complex tones that are rich in harmonics or overtones that can create really atonal sounds or tonal sounds that are way more sonically interesting than just raw waves. The next thing I wanted to talk about is that when they were developing the Jupiter-6, they needed to quite drastically cut costs. And the reason was that the DX7 came out, there were more and more samplers on the market, there was wavetable synthesis, and all the manufacturers had various things in development that would come out in the next couple of years. So an analog subtractive polysynth, particularly one with only 6 voices, was actually behind the times at that point. So if it wasn't affordable, it ran the risk of being a complete and utter failure. So amongst the cost-cutting measures, it only has a mono output, and that's in spite of the fact that you can split the keyboard and have two different sounds, 4 voices one side, 2 voices the other, which relates to the voice boards inside the synth actually that have 4 on one and 2 on the other, if you're interested. And so you have to add effects or add a mod like the Europa mod or multi-track to get back the width that you get as standard with the Jupiter 8 and Jupiter 4. So I was wondering whether there is a bit of presupposing going on with the Jupiter-6 where we hear certain things about it. So when we play it, we subconsciously do those kinds of things with it, and it becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where we think it has a particular sound. So out of interest, I wanted to just throw up 2 sawtooth waves and play a kind of really stereotypical 80s style riff to see what that sounds like. Now, whilst that does sound more kind of stereotypical of an early 80s analog polysynth, it does perhaps still sound a touch colder. But what I wanted to mention was that the Jupiter-6 was actually used to create the music and a number of the sound effects for the early Thomas the Tank Engine series. And I don't think anyone would ever describe Thomas the Tank Engine as dystopian. I don't know, maybe if your kids have made you watch the same episode 20 times, you would. But I wonder if there's 2 things going on with the Jupiter-6. One, we kind of think it sounds a certain way, so make those kinds of sounds, as I was saying. But 2, I think because the most interesting things about it are the cross-modulation, the audio rate modulation, and the multi-mode filters, it leads you to want to make those kinds of sounds, because those are the most interesting thing about it. And so I think that gives it a character, which is great. I'd rather a synth divided opinion, but at least led you to have an opinion rather than it being inoffensive and being kind of nice at everything. So if you're a past or present Jupiter-6 owner, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you to the owner of this synth, and thank you for watching.